Hello everybody. Hello everybody near and far behind the screens. There should be people joining us from Estonia, from Finland, from Sweden, from Malaysia, from Pakistan. Let us know in the comments below if I missed your country. And this is also the place to shoot your questions during today's webinar. But I'm Jaanika, I'm from Mikael's Labs, and I will be the host of today's webinar about the magic of mindset. Our main area in Mikael's Labs is in IT development. At the same time, we are passionate about creating a bridge between tech and business by bringing them closer to each other. And this is done by bringing people with different experiences, aspirations, and skills closer to each other for fruitful partnerships. And since our passion needed an output, and we truly believe that shared knowledge is multiplied success, then we, together with Science and Business Park Tehnopol, and with the help of event media, created 3 webinars about the ways how to tune up for a scale-up. The webinars are an example of how the already familiar panel discussion format turns into a hybrid one, and there are truly no borders, neither for the logistics of the panelists nor participants. And the first webinar focused specifically on the ways in which tech, so the CTOs, and business, so CEOs, could reach a win-win decisions for what's best for the company. The second one, last week, dived deeper into the role of project managers, the importance of having a structuring yet supportive role for completing any successful project. And you can rewatch the last webinars also from down below, but later, okay? And from both of these webinars, the biggest takeaway was that tech skills will always need people skills to make anything flourish. It's kind of like a mind and heart comparison, perhaps. Today, during the last webinar of this series, we will focus namely on how and why the mindset matters. The way people think, they act, communicate, shapes every part of the company. Be it services as tech-focused as they are, it always needs that human part in it. And by human, I also mean humane. One of the most influential change theorists, Kotter, has said that we keep a change in place by helping to create a new, supportive, and sufficiently strong organizational culture. While understanding that our world is changing faster and faster, the way we as organizations accept, greet, and nurture change matters. And it definitely starts with the mindset of people who make the organization, right? Within any company, having a certain alignment in how people think about the company, the area of expertise, collaboration, and so on, defines the actions, and from there, also the outcomes. Today, we have 4 panelists from 3 very different companies, and in different roles, who all in one way or another work with shaping their company's culture. At first, as we already have done previously, all the panelists will share their story of working with people and culture, and it takes about 10 minutes each. And this is followed by a panel discussion where we will dive deeper into everything related to the topic. So feel free also to share your curiosity and questions in the box below, and I will follow it through the webinar, so try to include your questions into the discussion flow as well. But I actually honestly can't wait to listen what our panelists have prepared for us. So let's kick it off. The first one to open today's panel is Martin Kustik. He's the head of development at Coop Bank, or maybe Coop. And I actually really loved his LinkedIn profile description, where he said that he's also an engineer for questions. So perhaps you should be sitting here, right? A change maker and a lifelong learner. And they say you should lead by example. So let's hear how he invites his team to come along.
All right. Can everyone see the presentation? Hopefully, yes. It's wonderful. I should start with howdy, y'all. My name is Martin. I'm going to be speaking about culture. All jokes aside, I'm really happy to be here and take part of the panel, and look forward to all the wonderful questions everybody has. And today I'm going to focus on Copank and our story of how we work with culture. So just to start out, to give you a little bit of background about myself, I had my bachelor's experience in the United States, in Michigan. I'm currently still working on my MA at the Estonian Business School. Working on it means that I've completed all the necessary coursework, but finding a thesis that I want to finish is harder than it looks. And lifelong learning, my education is constantly ongoing, which means that any chance I get, I want to learn something new, be in either situations like this one, in panels, or just reading videos. Learning is so much easier now than it was, let's say, 20, 30 years ago. So it's all about what you want to do. And to give you an idea a little bit about me and my mindset and how I approach things, let's start with some of the cornerstones of how I operate and how my mess of a mind works. Honesty. So I like honesty both ways. I like to be as honest as I can with other people. That way they know what I'm thinking rather than trying to guess what I'm thinking. Second, I love people and I love working with people. I've not always been as social as I am now, but the more I've grown professionally, the more I understood that I care about people, their development, their happiness, both in the workplace and outside. Then leadership by example. There's a famous saying, do as I say, not as I do. It always annoyed me because I think you should lead by example. That way it's a lot easier to follow you versus guess what you were saying last week so everyone can behave that way. Fourth for me is hiring people that are smarter than me. There used to be an old cliche where managers were always afraid to hire promising or very talented individuals who were very smart because, they might take my job. I hope when someone takes my job, that means I'm not necessary anymore. That means I've grown or they've grown and they found another challenge. So that's very important to know about me. And lastly, I love fear. I've not accepted any challenge in the past 6 years that I haven't been afraid of. I believe that fear is something that motivates me and a lot of people to go beyond their comfort zone. So for me, if I'm not afraid of it, that means it's not really something for me. It needs to push me outside of my comfort zone. And now a little bit about the story that I'm going to share with you, just some backstory. 2018, I got a promotion. They said, hey, Martin, you should be head of development. I think you have good skills. You should be doing that. It's like, wow, great. So what's wrong? So goals were not being met. That we were not being as successful as they wanted us to be. People, both internal clients and external clients, and also the team was not happy. We had big growth plans that needed to become successful, but we didn't have the mechanics to really make it work. And I needed to work out the kinks in the system. And all of this needed to be done yesterday, which is the typical mindset of changes. And I said, sure, let's do it. So what happened? How did I even start? I think in this portion, let's say it has 4 pinnacles. Every change starts with questions and a vision of what do you need to accomplish. You need to understand what the company needs to accomplish, whether it be KPIs, some goals, some strategic plans, or something else. And then you need to understand, are these goals short in terms that you need to just make something happen now, or is it the long plan, which means that this company is going to be around for a long time, and it needs to be built for the future. So I envisioned that my team needed to be really bold, smart, independent people who could basically do this alone, but they can't do big things alone. So they wanted to be part of big challenges. My vision was to have a very cool team that was not afraid. Then I needed to have goals. Okay, I had some sets of what I had in mind and what the people should be. I didn't have people yet. I had some, but obviously there were issues, and it wasn't really taking the company where it needed to be. So I wanted a team of excellent people who wanted to learn, who could support each other, that cared about the team environment, that this wasn't just a job, because we can have a job anywhere. But if you have a job that, you get up in the morning and be like, yes, I can go to work, get excited about the job, that's the kind of job you really want. And one other thing that was in that goal was that we needed to be open about communication. That meant we had ownership, and we didn't have, kitchen side gossip of the one team member named Joe that everybody hates but never wants to publicly say anything about it. We didn't want that. If we had a problem with Joe, we wanted to talk about it, so that way the team could grow and learn. Now, next up, if I had a goal in mind, excellent people, smart people, we are open, we want to support each other. If I wanted to build that team, I needed to be honest about the goal with everyone on the team, and also everyone that I brought on board with the team. And I said from the get-go that I will not waver in this long-term goal. That meant that, there's always stress about when you're building culture that, well, we need this guy in right now so we can do something. There's a small business goal or business goal that we need to get done right now. I said, that's great, but I want to make sure that we do it right from the first time we start it, and also that we don't compromise on the team. As soon as you set the bar for culture and expectations of the whole team, and you have a vision that your team is behind, you can't short sell anything on that. So I said, great, I know you really want this person to come as soon as possible, but we haven't found him yet. So it's going to take as long as it takes. And as already Yannick previously mentioned, you have to adapt. It has to be part of your DNA and culture, because we cannot be the Delphi Oracle that knows every other challenge that's going to come up in 2 weeks, a month, a year, a quarter from now. We can't do that, but we can make sure that we have the right people and the right mindset to do things no matter what comes up. So on my note, I did quite a few things. I made sure that I had access. So access to me was the most important thing to the team. I had a vision, so I need to make sure that anyone that has questions or feedback can come to me and talk about it. So we can figure out if I'm doing something wrong, maybe we're not communicating clearly, but have access. And at the same time, assess. Make sure what's working, what's not working. You need to talk to people to understand it, because it's always great to say that, well, I have a pretty good understanding without talking to people. But in my opinion, culture doesn't work like that. You really need to be on board with your people to understand it, and then bring up a vision with that. Then find quick fixes. You can't fix everything right now. You need to have long-term goals, short-term goals. So I bandaged up the things that I couldn't fix right now, didn't have the resources or other commitments that interfered. Then I took some time, took all the feedback, listened to people, wrote it down, workshopped it. I started processing it. Then I started weighing pros and cons, individual needs, team needs, long-term goals, where we need to go, and what were the obstacles and what were the opportunities that we could do. And then I put together a plan. I told everybody out about the plan. It goes into our goal process and how we set up goals for ourselves, and then focused on what we wanted to accomplish. And at the end of that road, every time adjust. I can't stress this enough, but whatever you think is perfect today doesn't mean anything tomorrow. That's kind of how I adapt change, because it might be good tomorrow, but we don't know. We have to try, make changes, and as long as we're really ready and available to make changes, everything happens. I haven't really felt any obstacles, and I just stuck with the vision. In this sense, leadership. So you know how Arthur and the knights, they had a round table. So one of the story for me behind it was that I wanted to create a culture where ownership was just the standard. You know, leadership and titles, they're always interesting things to talk about, but we had to have leaders everywhere. We couldn't just have one leader that made sure everything happened. So we have ownership everywhere. And as leader, in my sense, I needed to make sure that I was part of the solution, not the problem. So I wanted to make sure that I was clear of what I expected from the team, and everyone got the same delivery of the message of how I wanted us to work before they even came to work for us. And what I mean by be part of the solution is you don't want to be that leader or boss, which I don't really want to go into, but the type that everyone has to work around you. You know, if you had a bad day or you broke up with your girlfriend and your team has to deal with that, you're not really helping the culture. So be clear in your expectations. Make sure people understand what you need from them and what they need from you. That way it's a working relationship. Culture, in my opinion, works only if you take care of it. My biggest goal for next year is making sure we grow as a team, we get more experiences, and we get to do more great stuff. You don't hear any KPIs of what are the metrics, looking at turnover, or anything like that. So I'm just supporting our team so we can be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Be open. My cornerstone is being honest and open. And my favorite feedback is when people are being critical of me, because that way, those spark the most interesting conversations, because I love negative feedback. I don't know why, it's kind of a weird quirk, but that really makes me want to learn more in a situation where everyone's open, and that's just a remarkable thing to accomplish, and I feel we've done that at CoPank. And at the very least, if you care about people, bringing together culture and different people from different backgrounds, it's not difficult. It's just making sure it's an open space where you can do it. So in a nutshell, very, very quickly, that's what we've been doing at CoPank.
Thank you, Martin. I love how you came out from the closet, literally, with your story.
Yep.
And actually, Younes from Morocco said in Slido a quote that fits very well with your presentation as well, that there's a quote I like from Naveen Jain that said, if your dreams or objectives don't scare you, then they aren't big enough. So it's only a matter of finding right people to follow the dreams that scare you. But time for the next panelist. And she's actually my own team member. As our team is distributed between Tallinn and Karachi, then I am representing the Estonian side, and Sana will do that for Pakistani side. And she is our assistant manager of people and culture, and honestly, she lives and breathes for today's topic. So I'll let her tell you more. Sana.
All right. Hello, everybody. I hope my slides are visible by now. Everybody is doing well and safe at their homes. So I'm super excited to be here with such amazing people, and hearing their views is very good for my own learning curve. So to begin with my presentation, about me, I am Sana Waleed, an organizational psychologist by profession. And a bit of my background as to how I developed the interest in people and culture. So while I was doing my dissertation, I got a chance to work on the topic of employee empowerment, actually psychological empowerment of employees. So during that phase, when I was conducting that research, I came across very mind-opening ideas. For instance, generally we get to hear concepts like, okay, empowerment. For empowerment, we have to bring changes to the culture. We can cater to that through policies. But actually, when we talk about psychological empowerment, it's more to do with how much meaning a person can derive from their work, how valuable they feel in terms of their work, and in terms of how much input they're giving to the organization. So considering all of that together, that's when psychological empowerment actually takes place. So basically, it's a state of mind, if we look at it that way. So this particular time frame where I was conducting this research, it sparked this interest in me that I want to explore this area further, understand how people gain motivation, what makes them happy, and how many times we've come across people, who working in good organizations, but still they say that, we're not happy. So what is going wrong at that point that, regardless of organizations coming up with different strategies, people are still not happy? So that is something that I wanted to dive into. And that's where my career actually started from. So currently, if I talk about my role that I am doing at Mikhail's Labs, so I work on organizational development, making sure that all of our policies are aligned with the vision. And if, for instance, something is not working out, we keep revising those unless we can make sure that our main purpose, the people that make up our organization are happy. Until we don't achieve that, we are more than willing to make revisions. The second aspect that I really look after is employee development and growth. Now, when I talk about employee development and growth, I think this is super, super crucial for any organization, because being a human, when I look at myself, if I'm not learning something every other day, I tend to lose my motivation. So the essence of being a human, being someone who has the capacity to learn new things, I think the beauty lies within the fact that, they're continuously self-developing and, working towards their growth. So my idea towards development and growth is that we should have individualized plans, which we should, focus more on what the person wants, rather than, the company imposing certain things on them. Then we have employee well-being. Of course, that's the main essence of my role. I will give it my best to make sure that people around me are happy with the environment they're working in. The culture is positive. It nurtures them in a way that they are able to shine out, not like, giving them unnecessary stresses that they have to worry about the fact that, okay, we have to prove ourselves or we have to sell ourselves. No, I believe when we hire a person, they're hired for their capabilities. So that person does not, they don't have to prove themselves anymore. They should just focus on their productivity and what makes them happy and how they can further improve themselves. Lastly, building a positive work culture. Of course, when I talk, all of these four things are interlinked, and I cannot achieve anything unless the culture is what aligned with the vision that we have, and that is to provide a safe space to the people that are around us. Moving on, I would like to give you a brief overview about my company. So Mikhail's Labs is a development company, and with the aim to be a bridge between businesses and reliable tech talent. As Yannicka mentioned, we have two cross-cultural teams, one in Tallinn, Estonia, and the other in Karachi, Pakistan. Before I dive into the topic of how Mikhail's Labs, envision things, I would like to establish an understanding of how, the work culture of software houses in Pakistan is. So most of the companies working in the software technology sector, the work culture is such that there are a lot of restraints when it comes to performance of employees. For example, time. Most of the companies have the policy that you're supposed to be at work from 9 to 5, and not just 9 to 5. Like I'll give you an example. So if a person gets up from their space, or their mouse is idle, or their screen is, their PC goes on sleep, that time is actually calculated and deducted from their working hours. Now imagine if a person is working in such circumstances, their prime focus is not going to be their work, but rather, carrying around irrational stresses, which can be very easily eliminated, but sadly, it doesn't happen that way. And then there's a lot of seniority and junior comparisons going on, that people who are senior, they do not just expect, they demand respect. And it's the other way around when it comes to juniors. They're expected to follow and there's a lot of micromanagement going on. There's no room for creativity. So just to establish an understanding that how the work cultures are. Now, when I talk about Mikhail's, the fact that, Mikhail's has always visioned to provide reliable tech solutions. So now there are two aspects. Now we have a business side, and then we have the reliable tech talent side. Now from the business angle, we try to provide our clients with the best possible services through consultation, prioritization, tech stack choices, MVP, scaling up, and all of those, however we can provide them with the best of services. But I think the most important point for us is our people, who are the developers. And what we want for them is to build seniority in them. Now, what really happens is, I'm talking about the Pakistani mindset. So they perceive developers as someone who's sitting behind a computer and just doing coding. So they're not considered as human beings who want to grow, who want to maybe work on their soft skills. So they're not even provided with the opportunity to do that. We at Mikhail's, we wanted to change that. We wanted to be able to build our developers in a way that they can communicate and they can build relationships and they can actually work towards, creating a partnership with our clients that, come to us. So for that, we have come up with different practices, yes, actually. So what we do is we basically provide a supportive work environment along with supportive and easy to understand workflows so that people can, catch up with whatever's happening. Then along with that, we have different trainings going on. And I think I take pride in that particular factor. Now, our trainings are not just, focused on technical aspects, but also on emotional intelligence, which we believe is highly important, because when people are interacting with each other, it's important to be able to empathize and to be able to understand where that person is coming from. So EQ is super important in our opinion. And then the communication training, because for us, communication is super, super, super important. You'll get to understand that a bit later. And lastly, and most importantly, our focus has always been work-life balance. Now, if I talk about the general work culture in Pakistan, the work-life balance is quite off. To be honest, people don't even have the understanding of how work-life balance works and why is it so important. So there, you will come across people who probably go to work at, early in the morning at 9, and then they're in the offices till 10, 11 at night, and maybe even more. So imagine the kind of frustration that might have been building up in all these people, because obviously you have to have a balance between your personal life and professional life. So work-life balance is something that we really focus on, and we want our people to have that. So coming to the next part, that we have two teams, one in Tallinn and the other in Karachi. Now, how do we bring these two teams together? Our main practice is very simple. It's communication, open, honest communication. We encourage our people to, constantly be in touch with each other and not just interact on, a professional level, but also get to know each other on a personal basis, so that obviously, there are differences between the culture of, Estonian people and Pakistani people. So it took us some time in understanding that. For example, for us in Pakistan, time management is not that much of a priority. For example, if there's a meeting at 5 and you are entering the room by 5:03, it's acceptable. But at the same time, when we started working with our team in Estonia, we realized that no, for them, it's 5 means not even just 5, you step in 2 minutes before that, so you're ready. So now, with time, the more we communicate with each other, we learn these differences and how to, the most important point is that we need to be able to understand how we perceive different things. That is the only way two teams from different cultures can come together. So there are a lot of times that there are miscommunications, misinterpretations, but I think everything can be solved as long as people are conversing with each other. So that's our main goal. And obviously, the two more important aspects are collaboration and relationship focused approach. So this is how basically we bring our two teams together. Then coming to the people and culture part. Now, to be defined by the people and culture that we want to provide at Mikhail's. As I mentioned before, that we want to provide a safe space for people where they are celebrated for their individuality. We don't want to fix them into a certain box. We don't expect them to possess traits and characteristics that we require. No, every person is beautiful in their own way. So we want to celebrate individuality, and also to eliminate the fear that nobody has to prove themselves. They can be who they are, and they're recognized for that. So the first most important aspect is human-centric approach. I just defined how we envision it, and for that, for the human-centric approach, what we've done is we have two psychologists in the office. So at any point, a person feels frustrated, or they have certain anxiety issues going on due to XYZ reasons. It could be personal, professional. So two people are always readily available, that these people can go and talk to and lighten up. Apart from that, we focus on, again, as I mentioned, collaboration. We focus on teamwork. So we come up with different activities, and the main focus is to provide a culture, where everybody feels that they can work on themselves and grow themselves, rather than stressing about they have to prove themselves. Coming to the next point that we have, that is relationship oriented. Now, regardless, when people work together, obviously they're bound to have differences with each other, and that's absolutely normal. But when you're relationship oriented, when you're relationship focused, regardless of no matter what the issues are, you work towards it. It's about the approach. Similarly, when we say your solution focused approach, you look for solutions. In the same way, when you're relationship oriented, the people in the company, they automatically try to work towards those relationships, building and sustaining those relationships. And lastly, we discussion-based approach. So whenever we're coming up with a new policy or a new idea, or even if any of our people in the company have a new idea, we try our best to take it up in a discussion, because different people have different perceptions and different ideas, and you never know, if somebody has a better idea than you, and they can add up to that particular idea. So our approach is always discussion based, and that way the people in the company, they also feel valued, that their input matters. So I think combining all of these elements together, it does bring a positive culture together. I would also like to quickly add the little bits of policies that we have. Now, transparent communication. Everybody in the company is aware of what's happening and what's going on. The reason being, like, for example, just hypothetically assume that you're working in a company, but you don't know what the goal is, you don't know what the vision is, you don't know what your work means to the organization. I doubt that that person in that particular situation will be motivated enough to give their best. This is where transparent communication comes in. When the people know the goal, what's happening, what's going on, and how are they contributing to achieve that goal, their motivation is to the next level. So that's one. Then we have flexible working hours. Everybody can, they come in whenever they want to, and the focus is on completing their work. It's not about, that they have to focus on the number of hours they're giving to the company, but rather on the quality of the work. So that helps. And then individual goals, I spoke about them earlier as well, that we have, we sit individually with all of our people and get their input of how they see themselves growing, and then define a path and a journey for them. Then individual and group trainings. Our focus for trainings is basically that every person has their own struggles, or their own set of things they want to work on. So having a collective training, I think that comes later on, but on the initial level, we believe that it should be on an individual basis, so that the people can work on things that they really want to, and then later on we shift them into group trainings. Works really well, especially with EQ and communication training. We have Workplace for our internal communication and also for global communication. And on this particular platform, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate achievements, we are having personal conversations, we are sharing insights over different topics. And we also have a day scheduled, Monday as a appreciation day, where everybody is, appreciating their colleagues for not something huge, but basic things like maybe, somebody listened to me and helped me lower down my frustrations level. So this is the kind of culture we're trying to build, where people are appreciated for the little things they do. And I think that is the true beauty. When you start understanding the human side of people, because all of us are humans at the end of the day, and when you start grasping on it, I think they bloom in the most beautiful ways. Thank you very much. Yannicka, back to you.
Thank you, Sana. What I was seeing when I was hearing your or listening to your presentation was actually how you bloom in this topic and how your eyes shine. So you touched upon many important points, and one is the meaning of your own work that you give. So thank you for your presentation and for covering a lot of topics that we're going to deep dive later. And now off to the last panelists who are actually representing the same company. And I'm really excited to introduce Kadi Oja, who is the Director of Events and Legal Counsel, and Eleonora Valenti, who is the Chief People Officer from Mindvalley. And Mindvalley is one of the world's leading personal growth platform, which teaches the world the art of truly living extraordinary, fulfilling, and happy lives. And for sure, it needs to start from inside. So let's hear their story about how it's done there.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear both me and Eleonora. Very excited to be here as well, and thank you, Sana and Martin, for sharing your experience and your stories and your systems and processes. That was really inspiring and interesting to see what you guys are doing and what is similar to what we at Mindvalley are doing, and also some great ideas that we might consider for our teams moving forward as well. So thank you so much for sharing. And to begin with, then we would also like to introduce us in a few words. So I'm asking to, yes, thank you for the next slide. And Eleonora, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm tuning in from Malaysia, so a little bit ahead of time than some of you. I've been here in Malaysia joined Mindvalley about 2 years ago, but I am originally from Europe. I'm from Italy. Moved around different countries and been part of non-profit, very corporate companies, and now Mindvalley, that is something in between, but definitely all of them, all the organizations I've been part of have something in common. And one thing is that they're very mission driven. And this is something that is definitely about myself and my mindset. I love that Martin put that in the slide. So what is my mindset and my attitude? And for sure, being curious to learn, explore different things around the world is one of my key characteristics. And I'll tell you more later on. Kadi, on to you.
Thank you, Ele. Yes, so I'm from Estonia and based here now, but when I started with Mindvalley 7.5 years ago, then I actually moved to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia as well for the job, and I lived there for 3 years. And once I started feeling that I really want to be closer to my family and friends here in Estonia again, then an amazing opportunity came up to open up an office here in Estonia and to continue working for Mindvalley. So now it's been more than 7 years, and it's been really an amazing journey. And when Eleonora was saying that all of her past positions or companies have been really mission driven, then maybe just to give some background on my journey before Mindvalley, then I think in Mindvalley I actually understood why I wasn't feeling very excited or being in the right place in my previous jobs or positions, because working for Mindvalley, I understood that I didn't see the why back there behind the mission. I didn't see that the why was big enough. It was definitely there, but it just didn't resonate with my own mission in life, and therefore I was constantly feeling that there's something missing and there has to be something more where I can contribute. So I'm very, very grateful and lucky that I got to experience this work environment where I feel like this why is so big and so important and so aligned with what I believe in personally, that makes my job as a mission as well. So that's shortly about us, and I would like to give a little bit overview about the company itself, Mindvalley, because maybe not everyone knows, as we are an international company. As what Mindvalley does and the mission and why we do it is such an important part of our company culture, then I think it's important to understand what we do and why we do. And I would like to begin with this quote by Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And the thing is that global change and new technologies such as AI are disrupting the world, the careers, the work, the way we live. And the traditional education system hasn't really prepared us for this world. So the mission we have in Mindvalley is to teach people how to thrive in this new world with democratic education that really matters for 2020 and beyond. And we envision a place and the world where traditional education has been replaced by with lifelong transformation. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so how do we do it? Mindvalley creates high-quality programs in every category, basically, of human transformation and also entrepreneurship. So that means that people can learn the subjects that truly matter with the best teachers on our powerful learning platform. Next slide, please. And we don't just stop with education, but we also use AI and new technologies to create a powerful global network, connecting people with the right people, with connections and transformation to build their best lives. And this private network allows them to come together, to collaborate, to network with each other. And coming soon, our human-to-human matching engine will be able to introduce you to potential friends, business, life partners, and so on. So that's something that we are very, very excitedly currently working on and going to introduce very soon. Next slide, please. And all of our programs that we publish and create, our private community, our applications, our live workshops, mentoring classes, and so on, are available in the Mindvalley All Access membership. And by the end of 2021, we are aiming to be able to customize learning for each person's unique goals and aspirations and desired growth. And next slide, please. How do we drive that mission? So this mission and vision of Mindvalley is carried forward by this team of 300 plus people from 60 plus different nationalities. There's not everyone on this photo, but you can see how many people from different countries are represented here. And Simon Sinek has said in a really good way that people don't care what you do, but why you do it. This is what I also started with my presentation, expressing how in my past I didn't really have that strong feeling of the why behind my work and the company's work. So I think Mindvalley really has this mindset when also hiring people, and this helps to attract the great talent that we have, as it's very important to feel aligned with the mission of the company and also to see your job as a mission, therefore. Mindvalley has also been on World Blue's list of most democratic workplaces for, I think, like 12 years in a row, and has won several awards for our beautiful office spaces in our headquarters in Malaysia, as we really do care about providing inspiring work environments for people. Next slide, please. I want to also share a quote by Bill Jensen, the author of Hacking Work. It's not just about getting employees engaged with a company's vision. Future work will be about being engaged with an employee's vision. I believe that this future work is definitely already here, and that's what really matters in today's world. And that's what we focus on in Mindvalley as well. For example, in our application process, we ask people to submit their video cover letters and ask them to tell us about their mission in life and how they grow every day on their path towards this mission. And we do really want to understand how does Mindvalley fit into their mission and journey. And once the people have been hired, then we have a facilitated program called Lifebook that people go through, the team together, where people focus deeply on different categories of their lives, understanding where do they stand, where do they aspire to be. And also another exercise called 3 Most Important Questions, where people in 3 categories, experiences, growth, and contribution, list down their aspirations, and we stick it on a huge wall in the office where everyone can see what someone is aspiring to. And it really becomes a place where other colleagues, your friends, your teammates can go there and understand you on a deeper level and be there to support you in you achieving your goals. And also, very importantly, for the leadership team, to understand your team members better and seeing how you can help your team members to level up. Next slide, please. And this is something that we definitely go by when we hire people. And here I would like to share a story by Zig Ziglar that illustrates Mindvalley's approach when hiring. So he went to a company to do a management consulting. And he asked all the managers to come together and list down all the attributes for the best employees in the company. And he pushed them until they reached 114 attributes. And then he started taking that list and marking A for attitude and S for skill. And only 7 out of 114 were for skills, and 107 were for attitude. So basically that also showed how important is the mindset and attitude. And we have seen it in Mindvalley's experience as well, that we have hired people who are perfect in their skills and everything seems to be a great match. But the mindset wasn't what we were looking for, and it didn't work out. So for us, it's very, very important to have that mindset first, because we can always train for skills. Next slide, please. And here in short, these are the 4 pillars we focus on providing to people, but also something that we have seen in our experience matter the most to people. And how we do it is we create the culture of connection, we make people to relish life, we provide opportunities for lifelong learning, and we make it more than work. So in a very short way, these are some of the things I wanted to highlight for the introduction. There's so much more things that we are doing, and I'm sure Eleonora, as the expert in this field, will be definitely touching base on these once we move ahead with the panel discussion. But that's it for the introduction. Thank you.
I love that you mentioned, Kadi, by the way, on the video application, because I remember exactly mine. And the first slide that you put with the quote about Nelson Mandela was the one that I used as well to explain how my mission connected with Mindvalley. And I don't think you knew, so that's funny you mentioned that.
No, I didn't.
Thank you, Kati, for the introduction about the practices in Mindvalley. It's super inspiring to hear what you do there. And Jonas, again, really actively commenting from Morocco, and matching quote from his is that the new recruiting strategy would be the must hire people for the right mindset and then train them for the skills. But actually, it seems that you're already doing it. Thank you so much. Three very different, but at the same time, in many ways, very aligned stories. So it seems that each and every company that's present here in the panel discussion has their own way to go about the people and culture, but at the same time, you are doing very different things in order to nudge the company towards the goal that you have in mind. But we always start from the beginning, so let's start with a bit of a definition quest, shall we? So when we think broader about the culture, it's like it's undefinable. Many people have tried to define what is culture, but when I put together two words, organizational culture, and not even talking about any theoretical articles or researches, but answering from your own heart, then what are the first thoughts that come into your mind? So Martin, you've been waiting for the longest to talk, so up to you. What do you think?
I think if I had to boil it down, I would say attitude. I just love our team and the culture of how we could go can-do attitude. That's just uplifting, because we know we face different challenges all the time, and when you just have people that, okay, let's break it down, figure out the parts and fix it or build it or do whatever needed, that's just the best feeling. And I think, to me, that's part of the culture. The second was the thing that I mentioned in my presentation, that you love coming to work. So it's not so much as a job, it's just a place you like to hang out and fix things and work out things.
So as Kadi like mentioned earlier, that most of in the list were A's. So you agree on that, it seems, yeah? Sana, what do you think? What is your connotation with organization culture, coming from the background of having studied it in the school, but now having it in a real life, in a tangible form? What do you think?
I think what's most important is when we talk about organizational culture, it's important how we see it, how we, the vision. This is where the vision comes into play, because your organizational culture is mostly, not even mostly, it's dependent on the vision that you've created for your company, right? And the second most important part is that everybody in the company should be aligned with that vision. And how do you align them is through, creating that awareness, helping them build that understanding that why is it, what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. So enable them, empower them in a way that they understand that, it's for the best. Like, for example, I'll give you the example of Mikhail's. For a lot of people who come in from different, working cultures, it's difficult for them to adapt to the flexible hours. It's difficult for them to be able to, even though these are positive constructs, but it is difficult because, they're used to a different working style. So how do we help them in adapting to this particular culture? That is through communicating with them. That is through helping them understand how to go about it, and helping them, enabling them basically that, how they can, this positivity, how they can use it for their benefit and then work towards it. So I think it's very important to have everyone on the same page.
And sometimes the vision and the goal kind of pre-exists, but in Mindvalley's case, we were also talking about the person's own mission and their own personal why, and then seeing how the bigger picture kind of matches to it. So do you girls have something to include in your own thoughts about organizational culture and how could we define it?
I can give it a go. Yeah. This is not coming from the books. It is not even what I studied. Maybe there will be a chapter for another webinar. How do we choose career, or how sometimes life brings you somewhere else? But living about culture in my own experience, there's two words that come into my mind right now. One is water, and if I think of the metaphor that are the fish able to say that they are in the water, or is just is, and then you would have to stop and think about it to notice. And with culture, sometimes being in an organization, culture is something that you know it's there, but sometimes you're just on a roll, or you're used to it, and you don't think of how you would define it. So a lot of time is just how things work, even if you don't have specific instructions and you don't know why. But I completely agree with San as well that it is very, very important to link it with the vision and also create that awareness and make sure that it's clear for everybody. So that is, this combination is there, but how not to take it for granted and make sure that it is aligned for everyone. And another key word that came into my mind in today's world, looking about organizational culture, is to think of the lifestyle aspect as well. So it's not just dependent on work and how people are supposed to work, but also depending on who we are as human beings. And this is indeed where the quote about Mindvalley comes from, is that combination of what is the organization expecting and what is the contribution of each and every single individual. And something that I didn't mention on my introduction is that I spent most of my HR experience, so to speak, in recruitment. And I realized only now, after so many years, that I work more closely to culture rather than hiring, that who comes into the organization is so crucial and so important, especially at the early stage of the organization, to really create that cultural identity that becomes who the organization is. So these are some of the thoughts. Kadi, would you add something on Mindvalley?
Yeah, very, very much agree to what has been said here as well. But one thing that maybe is important to mention is values. And I think company culture, pretty much in essence, it is like, how do we live our values as a company, right? And for Mindvalley, for example, it's transformation, unity, and visioning. So this means that whatever we do for the company culture, the way we want to create it, it has to be aligned with these values. So it makes it easier for us to also know how do we want to have the company culture working so that it would be aligned with those values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, girls. I very much agree with Eleonora. I think that like company culture is also like a system. Like as you said, when you bring someone in the system, it adjusts itself a bit. So it's very, very, very crucial to choose. But we mentioned about attitudes and values and these things that when we see the cultural model, perhaps you've seen this iceberg model in the top part, which is visible on the surface of the water, are the things that you can see. So there is a beautiful board in the office where all the people's aspirations and dreams are, or there is a cool meeting room where people can hang out and spend their free time. That kind of nurtures and supports the company culture. But then when we go deeper underwater, where the bigger part of the cultural iceberg is, are the beliefs and the attitudes and these traits that are not visible with the eye, at least at the first place, but that are influencing the culture the most. So deep diving straight into this discussion, and I would like to hear about your ideas on how to nudge and support and nurture and plant seeds in the lower part of this cultural iceberg. So how can we shape the attitudes and values, and can we? So maybe Sana, you want to start?
Okay, so basically when we talk about, constructs like the underlying values, again, coming back to the main point that most of the things that, the values and beliefs that we have, they are based on our perceptions, right? So if we are talking about, so if we want to, for example, inculcate certain values within our people, of the company, so it's about changing that perception. And it's not like you have to break any barriers for that particular regard. It's just that you have to first empathize, build that empathy, right? Because when you build empathy, you understand where people are coming from, what the other person means, and what you mean, right? So once you have that empathy, you tap into the mindset. And when you tap into the mindset, that's where you understand how people perceive different things. Once it's out in the open, perceptions are out in the open, and you have an understanding of, okay, person A sees this particular thing as in this way, and person B looks at it another way. How do you bring them together? So when we talk about, mindsets, I think it's all about, again, awareness, talking about things, building awareness, helping people understand what are these concepts. For example, if I randomly just get up in my company and start talking about empowerment, or I talk about employee engagement, they won't really be able to connect with these words until unless I explain what they really are, and by creating that awareness. And once they have that understanding that, okay, this is what it means, and this is how we can perceive it in different ways, and now how are we coming together as one. So it's a long process, but if you take it slow and with continuous, like you probably can do it daily, or like the way we do and at Mikhail's is we have continuous sessions with our people, so that it's a constant, like you're structuring it in their mindset, reaching out to them on a constant basis. So in my opinion, this is how you can talk about perceptions, and you can talk about building values and aligning them together.
Mm-hmm. Martin, what's your take on diving deeper into the cultural iceberg and to the values and attitudes?
I like where we just ended, alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So when looking at vision, we have a long-term goal of where we want to go. Now it depends where we start. Is it we're starting a company and culture, or are we changing company and culture? For me, it's kind of a mix. We had the situation where we had some culture, but that culture didn't work for the organization. And I had to swap where we needed to go and where we needed to be. It's such a difficult question, but I think I'm leaning toward the values-based approach.
Mm-hmm.
We have some core tenets, core values for the company that spring the kind of umbrella to what kind of people do we need. And then it comes into the kind of the leadership of building culture, because if you can't have culture everywhere right away, can you start building culture in one team? And if you provide a success story of see what we can accomplish if we are on the same page, then you can just expand. You can become the evangelist of, what good culture means. Because, I mean, culture is such a wide thing anyway, but I like the values approach, where we take a look at who we have, what kind of people there are, what their needs are, what is the central focus, what brings us together. And people like having a dream, aspiration, or something to, follow or join behind and back up. And for us, everything, the iceberg underneath is we look at individuals and how together we make the culture. Because there's, we don't want the specific type. We want diversity. Diversity can be socioeconomic, upbringing, culture, different religions, different countries. So we look for that diversity, but centered around alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have that common goal we need to work toward?
Mm-hmm. And it's also like very much connected with building this collective awareness, or like I started to visualize instantly like that this team that carries already these values that you want to kind of imply and spread all around the organization, that kind of starts to invite in the others as well. Mindvalley, what does Team Mindvalley think about that?
If I can jump in, I was very much in agreement with what Martin was saying. My approach is also thinking a lot of times, what is the situation? So especially looking at the iceberg, my question number one would be, what is the purpose here? Apart from the size of the organization, what is the status? Are we dealing with a dysfunctional organizational culture? So what's behind that iceberg, behind the tip of the iceberg? Or is it already a positive culture that we want to reinforce? So that determines a very different strategy on how to change it or how to influence it. And for Mindvalley, we are extremely lucky, I think, because it has been such a positive and powerful culture that this is what really made people from more than 60 different countries to move to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, when nobody knew about Mindvalley. And also Malaysia is not as famous, for example, as a business hub than Singapore or New York. So this means that the culture needed to be so strong to really motivate this influx of talent, and also to motivate performance and growth of the organization, which happened consistently year on year. So we are very lucky to be already in this environment. And of course, all the credit here goes really to Vishen and his leadership, his vision from the beginning, creating Mindvalley this way. So it is already somehow working on the shoulders of the giants and keep improving this aspect. So what the situation is right now is two things. One, dealing with this year that has brought so many changes and forced the company to move remotely, also move the center of gravity a little bit from Malaysia, where traditionally most of the team was based, to Estonia, where more team members are based. And also we are hiring fully remote as well, which is something that we had never really done before. So these new changes forced us to do things differently. And the question we always had is, how do we keep our culture, even with a different geography, different hiring strategy, etc. The other change for the company is scale. As Mindvalley grows as an organization, we are preparing to probably multiply our business size by 10 in a few years, if not more, in terms of users, in terms of employees, in terms of revenues and all. So how do we keep the culture as we scale? So these are some of the things that we are looking at. And the way we do it is understanding absolutely where we want to go, what are the key criteria, the key values that we want to continue having, but thinking, how else can we do it? So some of the ways is to create new habits, not doing things physically as we used to do, but do it also remotely. And that comes a lot with not just saying the things that you want people to do, but to create habits. And the way you create habits is usually by repeating. So like reinforcing the key messages and reinforcing the direction. Create a sense of, why am I even doing it? So for people not just to follow blindly, but to know what's in it for them. And also to create a reward mechanism. So you know that the key element of habit is like having a cue and then an action and then getting a reward at the end. Otherwise, it just doesn't stick. So these are some of the things that we are playing with to reinforcing and moving our culture forward.
Mm-hmm. And Eleonora, you actually mentioned something that would be the essence of the next question as well. So today we are working, and most of the people have already been in contact with remote working all around the world. And that's a question where people cannot physically be together, and there are totally other means of communication and other rooms for meaning making in general, all this building this collective consciousness. And the question would be to the other panelists, Martin and Sana, what do you think are the essential ways how to keep or nurture the company culture when working remotely? Or what are important parts of that? Martin, what do you think?
That's a good question. I think I'd even flip it. I only have one concern about remote work. It's impulsive behavior, just spontaneous work. I think figuring out a way to connect with your team and the whole culture behind it, events, I mean, there are challenges, but I don't see anything that you can't overcome. You know, we can all adapt, and I have a lot of faith in my team because they've kind of been selected for their skill to be able to adapt with change. But I'm mostly worried about how do you get that creativity bug where, you know, you were in the kitchen and 4 people just started talking and they came up with a really cool idea, versus now, I have an idea, let's set up a Teams meeting in 2 weeks. You know, it doesn't work. So I'm more or less looking for creativity options where, you know, online whiteboards or something where people can really work on the creativity part that would normally just happen, and now we need to have a little extra effort to make it work.
A very good question you've posed. You really are a good question maker. Is how to create this like kitchen moments then virtually, and that's something that I've also been thinking. And what has worked would be that during the meetings that we have in Teams, we also include this coffee time, and sometimes just leave the Teams open and hang out when we are working and collaborating, because then we can exchange the ideas quickly. But definitely some innovative ideas would be good. Sana, what do you think? You are used to working remotely even before this thing happened with us this year, but what are your thoughts around building company culture when you're located in different places?
Okay, so this has been a huge challenge. I will admit that. You know, bringing people from 2 different cultures together. So, but as I mentioned before, one thing and foremost important thing is communication. But more than that, it's about building that understanding. So if we want to bring these 2 teams together, the first thing that we work towards is very consciously is understanding each other's culture, how people perceive each other, right? And for example, people in Pakistan, they are, you know, they're different. They have different opinions on, you know, how we're supposed to carry ourselves in an organization, and how seniors are supposed to be, or how the leadership team is supposed to be. You know, they have these preconceived notions, right? And in the same way, when we work with our team in Estonia, they have their, you know, different perceptions regarding things. So yes, it has been a challenge to understand those perceptions and then bring them together. But nonetheless, it has been effective so far. Ever since I've been at McGill's, it has been effective, and merely through making an extra effort in communicating. And as I mentioned before, just focusing on communication while keeping 2 things in mind, that we're building relationships. And not just building them, we're sustaining them. So when you keep this one particular thing in mind, all of us, all of the people in our company, they do combinedly make an effort to regularly have meetings to catch up, to know what's happening, and they can be as frequent as on a daily basis. So yes, I agree with Martin, it requires an extra effort. But I think when you have that particular goal in your mind, that you are relationship oriented, then I think it does, you know, eventually work out.
Thank you, Sana. There is a question someone anonymous asked on Slido. How do you work with your own attitude and happiness? And do you have any certain techniques or something? Interested to hear about your thoughts. Maybe Kadi, Eleonora, you can start off.
Yeah, so there's definitely several ways, and it kind of depends on the time as well, or what I'm personally going through currently, and there's different things that I've tested throughout the years and what worked for me. Some of the things to just mention is to, I guess, also practice more of emotional intelligence on a daily basis, understanding how I work, how other people work, how do emotions work. So I know how to react to certain things and how to look behind things, not just assume and make decisions based on that. And what definitely helps to level up my own happiness levels are some things like my morning routine, my breathing exercises, my meditation, moving my body, going for a workout, sometimes just taking a walk to the office and really being present to that walk. sometimes winter swimming that I've done in the past that made me feel super alive and so good. So it really depends, and I'm trying to just listen to myself and ask myself a very honest question. Why do I maybe feel down? Why do I not have the best state of being right now, and what can I do to support myself? And from there on, I usually know what I have to do to make my happiness level go up again.
Mm-hmm. Eleonora, do you want to add something?
Oh, I love all of them. For sure, this is something that has evolved a lot through the years. I think I've had phases for sure. As I worked also 6 years for Nike, a lot has been physical activity and how to include a little bit on every day. It is a big part of my well-being. For sure, another one is taking time and connecting whenever I need with people that make me feel good. And right now, I definitely keep my morning time and my morning autonomy before work, making sure that I do the things that make me feel good. And the game changer in the last years, for sure, has been recognizing my own emotions as well. So being honest, how do I really feel, and accept them, like sort of like you're watching a river and accepting what it is versus I'm in the river, I feel drowning and it's overwhelming. So shifting that perspective has changed a lot and helped me to build agility with that and dealing with emotions.
Thank you. I see Sana nodding happily when hearing about emotional intelligence. What about you? How do you keep yourself smiling?
Okay, so I've always been, not always, but ever since I've dived into the field of psychology, I've been someone who looks forward to building myself. So I have this habit of constantly introspecting myself, how I react to certain things, and even when a negative incident happens, yes, of course, it does affect my mood, but I think I have enough emotional control that I can manage my reactions. And then at the end of the day, what I do is I evaluate the entire situation. And even if I pick out one learning point out of it, it altogether changes my perception about that incident, and it makes me feel good. That, okay, a day of learning. So that's what matters to me. And of course, as you know, Kadi and Eleonora mentioned, that giving time to myself. I love to sketch whenever I'm frustrated. That's sort of like, letting off some steam activity for me. So I sketch whenever I can and do the things that I really, really enjoy. So I think when you keep all of these things together, it works really well.
Thank you. And Martin, what about you?
And smiling the whole time. Such a good question. I think for me, it's not only happiness, it's a range of motion, which means that at the end of the day, we're all human. So it's important not to forget that we're not machines. So as a leader as well, I try to be honest with my emotions. I think most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm really happy. But at the same time, when people come to me with their frustrations and maybe points where they need not motivation, but someone to listen to them and work through stuff, then it's as important for a leader or let's say evangelist of culture to be honest that, we're not always happy. And there are parts of days where we also need someone to talk to and be like, this is not going well. And I think it's a part of finding balance. So there used to be this old cliche of work-life balance. I don't like that cliche. I like the fact that everything in life needs balance. In certain points of time, work will take over a little bit more, but you can't lose sight of what's really important to you. So if family is important to you, work is important to you, learning is important to you, you can't lose sight of them all, but you can reshift focuses during different times. So for me, it's about finding balance. And as long as I'm honest, I'm mostly happy even with problems. I love problems. So I think most of my team would agree that I'm happy all the time, even when it's stressful. And then, like I said in my presentation, organization, I think in a capacity where you're also a leader, you have to be aware of the fact that you shouldn't carry baggage to culture. So everyone is going through stuff through personal life, work, extracurricular activities. You just have to be aware of what you're bringing to work and what you can share. Mm-hmm. I know that building trust takes time, but I love that part of working with people. People constantly opening up of who they are, what clicks for them and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that's part of my happiness story.
Mm. And thank you, Martin, for also bringing in that sometimes things are not happy at all. And this is where I wanted to lead the discussion. We still have 10 minutes, but it's perfectly enough to cover something that is sometimes hard, say that it's hard. It sometimes requires people to overcome their own resistance. We're talking about change. And change usually implies not so happy moments as well, and not so happy employees. So my question for you is that how do you, especially in today's world where agility and this like being able to change in this like fluid motion, as Eleonora brought in, a nice metaphor, what are the ways how to make the company culture be more fluid to change and being able to work with this resistance that naturally occurs and comes out? So, Kadi, Eleonora, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. Well, Mindvalley is definitely an environment when change is in its own place on a daily basis for sure. And I have a feeling that what makes it more simple for people to go along with the change is really reminding the mission to people, constantly reminding the mission. What is the goal that we are moving towards in the bigger picture? If that's clear for people, they know why they are doing this for, then it's easier not to take it also personally. If, let's say, I worked for something for a whole week and then something changes and it wasn't even needed anymore. I don't take it personally because I know that this is needed for the bigger picture goal and where we are heading. So I think this coming from the leadership level, from the founder, constantly reminding the mission and explaining why do we change things, not just saying that, okay, now today we changed the strategy, it's completely a different approach we are taking, then people are confused. They don't know why did I do something wrong, what happened here? So there has to be a very detailed explanation behind it as well, I think, to make people understand. Mm-hmm. And as I so resonated with Martin and on the part where also it's okay to honestly say if you're not okay with the change, and you don't have to always agree with the decision behind the change. So it's okay to say that let's agree to disagree, but I understand your point, I see the bigger picture, so I'm okay with the change. But yeah, honest, transparent communication is really the key, I think, because then as Martin mentioned, then if we do it as leaders, then we give the permission to our teams to do the same. Otherwise, if we are creating this superficial image of how things are and never honestly, openly communicating, then it can never also happen in the teams.
Mm-hmm. Eleonora, want to add something from your side?
This is so true about Mindvalley, for sure, creating that expectation. And it is part of the culture that we know the mission, and definitely there's big leverage on that. What I'm also thinking, and in my experience, there has been another interesting moment in my career when I was in Nike, for example, where I also saw a change at global scale. So there was a massive reorganization that touched every geography, and the timing of that change was very different. So whereas in Mindvalley, it is a given of the culture, we tend to do things quite quickly, then a big corporate or a bigger organization has a different timing of that. So it was very fascinating to see all the support that was given to people to share their concern, to lessen their fears, and then to understand what the change was about, and then be supported to move on. So it really depends a lot on the context. But definitely for Mindvalley, that is one of the keys. So this is like the two different aspects that I've seen playing, for example.
Martin, you had to readjust or find another gear into your team, and what were the ways how you worked with the resistance? And when we talked previously, also we also covered this generational gap and how it kind of creates another level of different mindsets, different perceptions, and therefore different resistance. So what's your take on that?
I love the point being made of open communication and transparency. That was my main mission for 2019, because everything was unclear and everything was fuzzy. No one knew what was going on. So that was one thing that we're still obviously working on, but it's something that we strive for. And I think for creating the change in mindset, or even like change management ABCs, we had to ask the question why. You know, what's the reasoning? That's one of the empowering questions I give to our team members. Like, if a project comes in, if you don't understand why we're doing it, you should ask. And if they don't like the question, send them to me. Because, you know, we're involved. There's so much time we spend at work. So we shifted to, you know, personal ownership of what we're doing. It's not just a job, it's more than that. And I think the generational gap, that's still an issue. I mean, it's an issue a lot of places. It's, you know, we talked about the 80s generations growing up, we grew up with tech, and not all previous generations did. So that doesn't mean that they're definitely behind on tech, but on average, they probably needed to get into it a lot later, or their kids did it. So there are a lot of things that we are tackling. I was trying to come up with a good reasoning in my head. I think it's, as long as we accept that change is happening, and we without clear communication of why we're doing things and how we're helping ourselves with the change, it's a lot easier to get on board. And even sometimes when we have to do things we don't like, you know, there are certain goals that match very well with the team, but might not work in the big scale or, you know, scaling up a team. And as long as you're honest and, in a sense, open about it every time you have questions, that change happens. But if you try to brush it off as like, oh, it's just one person or two people, it's okay. Not everyone's going to like it. Sure, they don't have to like it, but everyone needs to understand it. So I know we're stressing about the open and honest point a lot, but that just helps so much. When you're clear and communicating and respect everyone, then it's a mutual relationship that works and changes happen.
Thank you. Time for the last question before Sana responds to this one. And I just wanted to guide your thoughts towards what are then, if we know that this honesty, clear and transparent communication is the key to organizational change, what are the easiest measures or these like leverage points that you can press with minimal effort to bring out the maximum outcome for having this honesty, transparency and communication that works wonders? And Sana, now you can start off.
Okay, so when we talk about all of these aspects, I think the first thing is that they need to come down from the leadership. So the leadership sets the example. So even when it comes to change, it's when, as long as, you know, everybody in the company is setting an example, so that it becomes a habit, eventually starts becoming a habit. But before that, I have a different sort of a take towards change. For example, Yannicka, if I ask you right now that, just hypothetically assume, and I say that, Yannicka, I don't like the process of your, project. I would like you to change it. what sort of a reaction does that invoke?
I would say
How
that
does this make you feel?
I would feel maybe disappointed or sad or trying to blame myself, maybe.
Yes. So it basically makes you feel targeted, and you automatically have your defense mechanism in full action, right? So you automatically start resisting it. So the word change itself has a negative association with it, right? Now, if I say that, Yannicka, I want you to further improve or, develop your processes, how does that make you feel?
A lot better already. Less resistance, that's for sure.
Yes. So the words that we use, they have a huge impact on the people, right? So if I'm focusing on change, if I can alternate the word change with maybe progress, growth, development, the reaction is not going to be as harsh. Because it automatically makes you feel that, okay, you're progressing, and that is the purpose of humans. We're progressing each day. So if you take that approach, the resistance towards change automatically reduces to a huge extent.
So the slight reframing of the concept already induces a lot of change. Yeah, that's an excellent example.
Yes.
Thank you, Sana. What do you think, Kadi and Eleonora? What are the smallest and most simplest ways how to nudge the company culture to the positive side?
I really agree with what Sana said, that it really starts from the leadership and from the top. I think it's always about, walking the talk, and if it doesn't come from the top level, then nobody's doing it because nobody feels it. So it has to start from the communication from the top level and expressing that this is what is valued here, so people actually feel that it's a safe space where they can express themselves openly and transparently, and they're not scared of saying out loud what they think. And even if it's conflicting with the ideas of other people, they know that it's still welcomed, because a discussion is always a very healthy thing, I think, from which we can come to a better solution or a conclusion. So it's not just one's opinion and the decision made based on this one opinion, but it's a dialogue.
Yeah, on the leadership for sure, and on the example, I agree that it's both ways. It's not just what the leadership can say, like set the example, do it themselves, be transparent, being open, but also rewarding others whenever they are, instead of shutting them down. And that is so important. One last element that I wanted to bring is, maybe it's not the smallest one, it's not the most immediate one, but it could be the most long-lasting, is to make change or whatever reframing, what improvement, growth, to make it a skill. So instead of pushing change or like the evolution or growth at few moments, how can this become something normal? And I think, especially if we look at the century that we just started, the century we're in, this is going to be such a key skill. So the word is not just about waiting for things to settle down and be clear and be comfortable, but we know that the pace of evolution, of innovation, is just going to increase. So the more each individual is open to keep evolving and is comfortable with that, the easier it will be for the individual and for the organization.
And that's an awesome example how to become more fluid as an organization as well, and willingness to accept the change and greet it even. Thank you. And wrapping up with Martin, what do you think? I
had a quick comparison too. One is the leadership approach we talked about. So it starts from the leadership that grows in the organization. Then the other one is grassroots, where maybe the leadership doesn't see the benefit of it yet. But on a grassroots level, you have a team or someone that can really push it somewhere and make everyone see, both ways it can happen. And it just stuck in my head as like, when you have a kid, there's an option that as a parent, you can teach them everything you want. You can help them lean toward where you want to lean. As a company, leadership, you can do the same to the teams, the organization. Or the kid can learn on their own and then influence the parents. So I think both ways can happen. It's really perfect when leadership's on board and believes in culture. So I think a lot of younger companies or very experienced companies in this area do really well, and especially startups, because it's very important for them right away. But for some seasoned companies, I think grassroots works too. So you have lots of agents of change that believe in culture and see the benefits, and they just expand and expand until the entire organization sees the benefits.
Thank you. What have we done here is that we've exceeded the time of the panel discussion for 5 minutes. Not very Estonian way, but what can you do if you have so interesting panelists and cases here? So I really, really appreciate and thank you for taking the time to join the panel, to share your ideas. That was super valuable in tackling the work in people, culture, change management, and all the rest. Thank you for joining this virtual panel. It's an example showcase of how nothing doesn't have to be cancelled, but it can be expanded. So we have people from Pakistan, from Malaysia, from all around the world joining us here. Thank you for everybody who were watching, who were putting in their questions, their ideas, their quotes, valuable, and have a beautiful rest of the year. Hope to see you soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.